Good morning. This is Dr. Ken Long from DeskFim at CGSC. It is August 12th, 2021. So I want to tell a little story about a P930 insight on the subject of identifying our default orientation to new and surprising problems. So I was co-teaching with the great DTAC instructor Tim McCain, and we had just finished some readings and discussions about various mental models we'll use in the military decision-making process, like mission variables, MET-TC, PME-CPT, A-scope, battlefield frameworks. And as a way to make those real and as a check on learning, Tim put them at the boards and gave them this short visual problem. He said, "You've got 5 minutes, solve this problem," beginning with framing the problem. And he showed him a blue force division, a red force enemy unit of unknown size, and then a blue objective in a frame. Off you go to the boards. It was interesting to see how the groups were storming, forming, norming, and transforming, how they were solving problems, framing problems, using the professional language in new ways. And after about a minute, I decided to put my logistician's hat on and unpack my head. And so my default orientation is to use IPB. See the terrain, see yourself, see the enemy. And this is what came out. I thought about this problem framed by making the assumption that this was my mission to solve because I was given this problem and I considered this to be an area of operations. When I see the terrain, I see white space. Was that Great Plains or no significant terrain or typical terrain that doesn't provide a compelling constraint? Or was it just information I didn't know? What did I know about the enemy? I know I have an enemy in front of me between me and the objective. I just don't know what size he is. So that's where I am in the mission orientation in terms of the amount I know. And then what I know about the blue force is that we are a blue division. I don't know any of the task organizations, so I think it's a typical division. I don't know the readiness, so I'm going to assume that because you give me an objective that I have a approximately division's level of typical capability, probably at least amber, as a start point. So I'm starting to fill in the gaps of what I know and what I don't know. It occurred to me then that there is a window of perception that we look through when we're trying to see the enemy and see the terrain. Is that enemy that I see, is he just a platoon? Or is that platoon part of a company, a battalion, a regiment, a division, a front? What is the moment in time? How much time have I been watching him? What can I learn from the passage of time? What's the lens that I'm looking through to start identifying and categorizing and understanding the enemy? Is my perception of him in the sense that I make of him a reflection of what I expect? So in other words, is it a mirror? Am I projecting or am I genuinely seeing? Do I have technologies or skills that allow me to amplify what I can see, like a telescope? Does this window of perception act as a screen or a filter to shape this in a certain way? Is it a distorting mirror or am I genuinely seeing what's there? What is it that I know about myself, and what can I really know about myself? Why does the commander get out of the command post to go troop the line? He's heard what the staff told him about the blue force, and the staff told him what the subordinate staffs told them. What could possibly go wrong? Surely that's timely, accurate, and complete, and objective. And the commanders listened to his subordinate commanders about their commander's estimate of the situation, including their own particular status, and that matters. But the commander gets out and walks the ground so that he can at least triangulate and then learn something about his own perceptions, about the utility or characteristics of his staff and their ability to paint a picture compared to what he sees, and he'll learn something about his commanders. He listens to what they say, but then he goes and sees what he sees, and that allows him to update his estimate of the status of his commanders. And if he's self-reflective, he has his own image of what the unit feels like, and then he goes to see, and he can calibrate his own commander's estimate if he's a reflective learner. What's the source of the knowledge that we're using to make conclusions about what we think we know? What's our degree of confidence? What is the point of view that we're adopting, or multiples, as we try to see ourselves and see the enemy? What kind of biases and filters are in place? And how much do we trust those who are reporting to us? How much do we trust our lion eyes or the status reports? And how do we start getting our arms around this fog of war and converting from uncertainty to certainty? How big, how fast is that enemy? What are his tasks and purposes? Can we infer that from the behavior? Or how many different tasks and purposes could that information that we accept as true satisfy? How many different courses of action could it support? And we're reminded of the Chinese adage of, may you live in interesting times, and we remember that our environment is characterized by certain degrees of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, for which we thank the Army War College for a useful concept that the rest of the world is actually using to help get their arms around wicked problems. Volatility, the rate, magnitude, frequency, consequences of the changes that we're seeing in a dynamic world. Uncertainty, the percentage of the knowable facts that we actually know, and how do you estimate that if you don't know everything? And how reliable is that estimate of the degree of uncertainty you're in? Do you know 40% of what's needed or 70%? Colin Powell liked to act in that window between 40 and 70, so he had enough information to begin to see patterns, but not so much that he was delaying action while trying to hold out for the diminishingly useful new information that was still out there. And how fast is that changing anyway? Volatility. Complexity is the computational complexity of that uncertain environment. How many variables are there? How many different values can they hold? What's the combinatorial complexity of all those variables? It could be chaos where these variables are interacting in causal ways, but there are so many possibilities, and because of the sensitivity to start conditions, it's essentially unpredictable, although has elements of orderly behavior. Ambiguity, the problem that some facts, even when known and true to a reasonable degree, can support multiple mutually exclusive conclusions. So how valuable is it to spend effort to gather facts which don't reduce the ambiguity but add to it? So those are some of the ideas behind wicked problems. And I want to connect this to Jeff Hawkins' recent book in June 2021 about 1,000 Brains, A New Theory of Intelligence, in which he describes the social nature of our internal processing, which reflects the social nature of our group intelligence. Our internal functioning looks like 150,000 independent model-making mini-brains in our head, which convert perceptions into estimates and predictions about the world in small ways, and then which collaborate in a voting system to create the perceptions we become aware of, which give us our provisional understanding of the larger world model. So we have thousands of these mental models operating at the biological level that inform our worldview. So this is one of those, the orientation of IPB, the mental models that come from the professional control measures that communicate but predict and control and enlighten our understanding of what's going on in the world. The language that we use itself to contain our understandings of the perceptions that are formed. So this was such a great PE. It took 5 minutes to set up. It led to a deep hour discussion of the different ways in which the military mental models might be overlaid on here to begin to systematically move towards feelings of certainty about this complex, dynamic VUCA world that we're in. So just a tremendous job by Tim. And I made the point as the logistician that I use that IPB model as my default point of view to update my sustainment estimate, because the terrain shapes the possibilities as well as limitations of how I might perform sustainment given the characteristics of our delivery systems, that the enemy gets a vote and he has choices and his actions have impacts on us. And then what I can see about ourselves, our missions, the troops, the readiness, locations, posture, priorities, and my status reporting that allow me to convert individual requests for support into something like a minimum mission essential estimate of what everybody needs to be able to support that mission set. So we have a dynamic model here which feels primal and foundational, and which precedes the receipt of mission and then gets updated by those mission variables as they come in. So that feels like a way to begin getting our arms around that continuous running estimate for sustainment and giving us the ability to see outside of our technical dimensions, but include something like a holistic view of the battlefield. So, mind mapping, rapid PEs to discover where the students are, to give them practice in using the language of the profession and framing and reframing problems and communicating with professional language. So thanks for your kind attention. Hat tip to Tim McCain at DTAC. This is Dr. Long at DESFIM. Thanks for your attention.